Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always tough to do a speech after lunch. I want to thank you for allowing me to present to you today. As I was getting mic'd up, I heard that Chopin actually played in this exact room. So hopefully I don't do his wonderful music disservice. In fact, I was actually halfway through the Chancellor's speech this morning when I convinced myself I was in the wrong event, and I thought I'll be quiet until the break time, and I'll try and escape before any security person gets into trouble. But joking aside, as a company who spends a lot of time talking to the leading brands and innovators in this industry, from handset manufacturers to automobile manufacturers to manufacturers of consumer goods, it's very rarely we get a chance to explain to the wider audience what we're doing. So I really want to thank you and Cambridge Wireless for giving us an opportunity for that. I'm here today to talk about the impact of a cloud-connected, location-aware, media-rich world on consumer, enterprise, and government. It's quite a mouthful. But really the question I really want you to leave you with is, what is the impact once you know where you are, and the fact that technology has evolved to a point where everything is available in a media-rich way from the cloud? What does that mean? So if your enterprise or interest lay outside of these three areas, don't despair. I hope to hopefully imagine some new products as a result of that. A little bit about my company. It's based in Cambridge. It's a wonderful place, a model for the innovations that we've talked about. Great universities, great university hospitals, lots of startup, lots of incubation. But what do we do? It's hard to encompass the diversity of the kind of things that CSR does in the time allowed. But at home, I listen to music on my smartphone, which I keep on a Napster or a Spotify, and I stream it here from the cloud, and I stream it from here to my sound dock or my headsets using CSR technology. If I was at the Olympic event today, there would be probably an 80% chance that if I have a point-and-shoot camera, I'll be using our camera chip to be able to take those images. I try to keep myself fit, and I would use one of many of our GPS watches, or recently, as announced by Nike, shoes with intelligent sensors put in to help you get fitter. So these are some of the things that we do as a company. And if I didn't like cycling so much, my son may be watching his media in his car, which is streamed through technology that we provide, as well as navigation that we provide. And finally, location. We've been an early pioneer in location, especially as part of our merger with Surf. So location is a fairly key part of our company strategy, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So in order to understand what's possible in the future with location, let me just take a brief look back in time. Throughout history, we've looked for ways to navigate and improve our location. Even before computers were knowing, people understood the value of navigation and location. If we look at what's happened, whether it's from the 11th century compass, where it allowed you to kind of navigate north and south, to 15th century, where this wonderful device called the astrolabe was invented that helped you either get a latitude if you knew the local time, or if you knew the local time, get a latitude, was invented. Created new industries, new enterprises, and new opportunities. And this is the actual funding of a British initiative, right? This is 18th century now. The problem is, how do you find longitude? How do you find east-west? The only way you can do that is with one of these, a watch. The problem is, during those times, the technology wasn't ready to provide accurate timepieces in wobbling ships with difference in temperature, humidity, etc. So this gentleman spent a fairly significant amount of his time, his name is John Harrison, as part of a British government initiative which they funded, I think 10,000, or if you're BBC, it's £20,000 on the BBC website, to invent a device that provide accurate longitude. And that allowed Cook to discover a whole set of new lands and new worlds. Moving forward in time, this is where electronics gets in. You look at radio directional finders. This is just like an electronic lighthouse. And in the 40s, the radar that we even use today, and I'm sure a lot of you use to get here today. However, when I started out in sales in '88, this is what I had. I had a map. And then through the innovations that a lot of people have talked about, along came this. So now I have my map on here, and I have my location on here, and some of the innovations that we've been driving as an organization has made that possible. So what else is there, right? We can do, I'm sure you guys have used it today. And that particular business created a lot of traditional business that we know today, whether it's asset tracking or field management or navigation in automotive, or as you use it in the handset, mobile advertising and the ability to interact with customers and almost use that as an opportunity of creating new revenue. But that's, and the way it works really simply is, I'm not going to get into it, it's just a GPS receiver listens to satellite in the skies and triangulates the position. But we're a GPS company and we're a locations company, so we think, well, what's next? What about finding a location indoors? In today's technology, you can't really do it, primarily because GPS does not penetrate through the building. It's not designed to penetrate through most buildings. So we've been working on this solution for a number of years. So we wanted to create an experience that we did in the outside world on a handset, on platforms on the inside. So as urban populations grow, as people need to find from one point to another inside, has been our quest for a number of years, and I'm pleased to talk to you about it today. So there are a number of, the problem now is, wherever you want to find yourself inside, it's going to be a challenge. So there's a number of solutions that are working on it. One of them is to use the Wi-Fi network. We have a lot of Wi-Fi base stations everywhere. Why don't we use them to triangulate a position? Because they're all, if you think about them, they're just radio transmitted. They can pretend to be stationary satellites. And there are many companies who are working on a Wi-Fi based solution, and it works okay. But there's a problem. The inherent problem is the longer you spend indoors, the more errors creep into it. So the more inaccurate it gets, the longer you spend. So that solution in itself doesn't solve it. Okay. So what about this? I've got a lot of sensors on this. I've got an accelerometer, I've got a navigator, I've got basically everything that I used on a ship pretty much here. Why don't I use that to do dead reckoning? And yeah, that's a great idea. The problem is the same. If we actually start testing it, the errors get worse and worse as you spend more and more time inside. And people tend not to use their phones like this. They tend to be in the pocket, they tend to be in a natural way. So you've got more errors coming into the whole complexity of the problem. So the problem in itself is quite a complicated one, and let me kind of share with you, some of the ideas that we've had on how to do that. So the question is, how do I actually enable accurate indoor location without the need to deploy either an expensive infrastructure and also make it self-learning, self-correcting, so I can really go out and accelerate, the indoor experience quickly. So the way we approach it is kind of like a similar concept to what was mentioned earlier today, is we fuse everything that we get. We recycle whatever we get. So in our latest generation products, instead of just GPS, we'll listen to any satellite that might be present, if there is a satellite, whether it's GNSS or Compass, or even we're talking to Boeing about deciphering the Iridium timing satellite so we can get that signal inside of a building, because that will penetrate it. So we push the silicon frontier. We also put inside of the silicon a radio receiver that's able to listen to any radio that might be there, whether it's a GSM or a Wi-Fi. And then we put in a MEMS gateway that look at all the movements that are happening in the sensors. And we take all of this essentially and put it on a cloud. And with the databases, we create a self-learning, self-correcting algorithm to take the environment that it's in today. So it doesn't need actually an infrastructure. So how does it work? We've done this testing, and I wanted to share some of these results, and this is probably the first time outside of customers I've shared this data. This is an example where we've kind of bounded the Wi-Fi signal with the PDR, fusing it all together, and we've seen a lot of improvements in accuracy. And here's, in November the 1st, we did a show in San Francisco at the Intercontinental, its locations and beyond, where we invite all the thought leaders, all the brands that use our products aggressively to talk and show them this. So on the left, you just see a standard Android phone with today's technology. And when you're inside of the building and you're trying to find a position, you can try it today, it will put you outside of the building. Using the technology that we've created, which is to fuse all of this thing, it actually does put you inside of the building. So it works. Here's another more complicated challenge that we did. This is Valley Fair. This is Silicon Valley Mall. It's a massive mall. And the blue line going through it was a test case. So we said, right, we'll go into position. We'll go in from Macy's at the bottom right hand. And we'll go inside of the mall. We'll come out at Nordstrom on the right. And we'll make a couple of deviations. And we'll compare the results of our solution with if we try to do it with Wi-Fi, if we try to do it with pedestrian dead reckoning. And the results were quite compelling. You know, the red dot shows exactly where we are in terms of this technology. So we're actually talking to a lot of the brands who you probably use today, a lot of the service providers that are probably you are customers of, to see how they can use this technology in their strategy. And here's some more examples of the World Mobile Congress. And the idea of it is to be able to offer that to anybody who's got imagination, who could use a location, an API, a smartphone, and the cloud to create content that makes sense for a world that has a value of indoor location, or geo-fencing an individual to a product or many other different applications. So the markets that we're focusing on at the moment are three. We're a fiscally responsible company. There's loads and loads of opportunities here, but this is where we're focusing. We're focusing on enterprise and government, where we see a great increase in the need to bring your own devices into companies, but you may want to geofence that data. So you might want to say, right, Dipak, I don't really mind you bringing this phone into work, but you can only access the information that's relevant to your work while you're there, and not when you go home. Right? So we geofence information. If you look at governments, military grades, or evacuation of people, there's a lot of value around potential of indoor location just in that segment. In asset tracking, we're seeing a lot of interest because it's easy to track assets outside, but you can't track assets inside, especially if the urban populations are growing. This is going to be more and more complicated. Lone workers, you can track them outside, but it's very difficult to track them inside. So this actually solves that fundamental problem. And the final one, which is consumer, the LBS market. We're seeing retailers actually really excited by this thing. So it's like, I'm a classic example of this. I travel a lot, so I do a lot of my shopping online using a web app. So when I arrive home, an hour later, my shopping arrives. But when I'm at home, with this technology, when I'm in the store, I automatically, without having to kind of worry about opt-in and out, as long as I say, look, while I'm in this area, I don't mind you sending me couponing. I might not. So it can then put me close to the products that I may be interested into to help me make choices and buy through in a more intuitive way. So if I was to just look at those three markets and look at the devices collected, we see that growing from 2013 to 2017 from 500 million units to nearly 1 billion units. And all of these have the potential of needing the service of having indoor location. So we see this as a huge potential. So as a conclusion, location innovations are making this world a smaller place. I think we've all talked about that. As the urban population rises, as more and more people start living in cities, indoor location will dramatically change the way we kind of allow that to happen in the marketplace. The cloud and the web services that are available today actually does enable you to make that a reality today. And I see this as a new multi-million-dollar potential, for using location in a way that it hasn't done before. We've seen the value it's created in the outside, and I think there's a huge potential for this indoors. So once again, I'd like to thank you for your time.